is a podcast centered around brand building, customer experience, and above all, customer retention. We want to give you the answers to the question, how do I get my customers to come back again? But what if the person buying is not the person who's actually using and enjoying your products? Would that change your strategy? Today, we're covering the difference between your buyer persona and your user persona. We're going to go over how to discover the difference and what this brand has learned and how they leveraged it. And I'm excited to talk about this with Ben Perkin, founder of AndCollar. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate you having me.
Before we go too deep into what AndCollar kind of discovered and what you did about it, maybe like for those listening, what would you say a buyer persona and a user persona are?
Sure. I mean, for me, we don't necessarily use that nomenclature here in-house, but it's basically buyer persona from our perspective is who is the person actually giving their credit card information on our website and purchasing the product. I think really that's how we define it. Who is the one who is purchasing the product? And typically that's also, this is where it's that fine balance, but a lot of the times that's where most of our marketing budget goes towards the person actually buying. As for user persona, we define that as who is the end user of our product. So who's wearing our dress shirt, who's wearing our pants, socks, ties, whatever. So the way we define it is who is actually buying versus who is actually using, making it as simple as that.
So it sounds like user persona was someone very similar to you. And then obviously at some point there was this discovery of like, you're building for this person. They're the person who's going to use it, but someone else is potentially making the purchase here. So who is that someone else for AndCollar, and like, how'd that happen? Like, how did you find that out?
So it's predominantly women and predominantly mothers and significant others, those who care about those 20 to 35-year-old guys and their wardrobes, the ones who are like, Alex, I just want you to succeed in life, where they genuinely care about you and they want to help you graduate from your college hoodie and jeans.
With all that information and like knowing this difference, like did that change anything about the on-site interactions or maybe how you structure customer support and kind of those interactions on site? Now knowing that it's 65% of the people who are on the site are going to be women versus men?
Absolutely. And so, I mean, the first action item we did was hire they internally call themselves the dream team. So our customer support team are exclusively, hey, they earned it. And I would say they're better than the 94 Olympic team. Just going to say, or whatever year it was, 92, 94. But anyways, we said, okay, not only are 65% of purchasers and that buyer persona are women, like 88% of customer service interactions are women. So they're the ones who are actually trying to make it work. And so we said, okay, then let's speak to them in a way that's very relatable. And so we brought on a dream team of exclusively, 30 to 45-year-old women who are awesome. They're stay-at-home moms. They're the real drivers of the business at this point, where they're talking in a way that, the buyer persona can really relate to. We think we've really nailed the product, and that's where it helps that I'm the user persona. It's like, hey, well, let's just make something that I like, or I guess like more if we're using it contextually. But in terms of the buyer, the one who's actually giving over the credit card, let's do everything we can to talk in their language. And our dream team has been awesome, and they can be very relatable. Where it's, hey, my husband is a medium slim as well, and the sleeve is a hair short, just like you said, but I do this, or, oh, I just throw Clorox if there's some sort of issue, or whatever, where it's in a way that I can never communicate adequately or in the same way or relatably. This dream team is awesome. And so that was the first thing we did. Let's talk to the buyer in a way that they can relate to.
The reason I loved it so much is because I actually had seen the creative that you had put together a little bit earlier that was very clearly targeting the user. So for me, it was this kind of like pivot of, we had campaign number one all about the end user, and then we had campaign number two all about the buyer.
Yep.
And I'll put a link to this other one in the show notes as well. But the first one was kind of like a guy that's late for work is the essence of it. And he's kind of like doing parkour and like things are being thrown at him. He's sliding in the grass and kind of like getting to a lot of the same benefits,
Yep.
but from the guy's perspective. So I guess my question here is, which one of those campaigns was better for AntCaller?
That's where it's hard to make like a black or white distinction. And we did it a little bit intentionally, but like you said, we just realized, hey, the one who's buying are women. But the way we've structured the two assets, I guess, is we want the men to potentially be interested enough that they can either support the female if she says, hey, there's this dress shirt that I was thinking about getting you. And he said, oh, yeah, I saw it. So that commuter, we call it the commuter video, where we try not to take ourselves too seriously. That's one thing. We don't, it's like, hey, we don't want to, for both groups, both the buyer and the user, we don't want a guy next to a red Ferrari with like a girl in a red dress. I mean, what you see with typical fashion, it's like, we're not selling that. We just want to sell you comfort. We're not going to make you special. We're just going to make you feel like yourself rather than a sellout. And so we designed them to work together where the commuter video almost exclusively only goes to men. And it performs very well. I personally prefer that video because, like you said, it speaks to me. But I mean, ultimately, in terms of campaign and how we're running ads, they both are running one to the men, one to the women, and hopefully they kind of work together. This triangulation. Oh, for the both of us, we should get this dress shirt. One because you're using it, and one because I have to end up taking care of it. But I guess if you had to choose one or the other, it's called Sexy Dad. Sexy Dad had more of a revenue impact, which makes sense if 65% of purchases are coming from women and their average order value is higher. It makes sense. So Sexy Dad beat Supertramp in that. Okay, this is sounding horrible. Devin Supertramp. Yeah, Devin Supertramp's a YouTube influencer that ran that video. So the video is the commuter video. Sorry. Yeah.
Gotcha. So the campaign that was targeting the buyer obviously had the revenue impact, and that makes sense. But from your perspective, they're actually working in tandem. So there's a buyer persona ad, and that is designed to like, hey, how can I get someone to make that purchase? But obviously they're not going to make another purchase if we can't get the user of the product on side with this purchase as well. So the commuter ad was all about showing the benefits, making sure that that person who's actually going to be using it, wearing it, sees it as has the same value for it as the buyer does. So they're working in tandem. Even if we're going to say that the buyer persona campaign had more of a revenue impact, you actually see them working very well together. And maybe it wouldn't have had the same revenue impact if we started there and we didn't have that user campaign kind of already in market.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, I'm going to do my best to kind of summarize everything that we talked about here today. So bear with me. Buyer and user persona. Buyer is the person who's actually putting the credit card into your Shopify site and making the purchase. User is the person who's going to put it on, experience it, feel it, interact with it. There can be a difference between the two. Look at your Shopify purchase information. Take a look at what those customers look like and try to see if you can find a difference with your users. That's going to be harder for some brands. So Ben's recommendation here is use a tool like Okendo and just start to ask people. Start to ask, did you make a purchase for you or did you make a purchase for someone else? Because that's going to start to build up this information library about what your user looks like compared to what your buyer looks like. And once you know that, you can actually start to make changes across your site and across your experience. So what Ben and the team did here is they made sure that their customer support team was super relatable to the buyer so that they could speak the same language and connect on a deeper level. And in terms of the campaigns that they're actually putting together here, it's important to actually focus on both. You need to have marketing that is tailored to the buyer to get them to actually come and make the purchase. But if you can't get that end user on side with that purchase, then that first campaign is going to fall apart. They have to work in tandem together. And Ben's final piece of advice was make sure that you start on this now. It is going to change everything about how you operate, from customer support to marketing. And if you can know the difference there, it's going to have a huge impact. Ben, anything I missed there?
You said it better than I did. That was awesome.
All right. Well, before we let you go, is there anywhere where our listeners can interact with you? Maybe Twitter, LinkedIn, a blog, somewhere where they can kind of keep tabs on you personally?
I'm not interesting. I gave you that full disclaimer at first. A goal for 2021 was to tweet every day. I have not done a single tweet this year, so I've fallen horribly short there. So just on LinkedIn would be the best one.
Ben selling himself short there. I follow Ben on LinkedIn, and he has a ton of golden nuggets that make it onto LinkedIn. So I'll make sure that his LinkedIn profile gets into the show notes as well. And Ben, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome. Thanks a ton, Alex. Really appreciate it.